Florida, a place known for its stunning beaches, vibrant nightlife, and breathtaking sunsets, was the perfect backdrop for the wedding of David and Emily. They were a couple that seemed destined for happiness, their love story the kind that often inspired movies and novels. David, a loyal and hard-working man, had fallen head over heels for Emily, whose beauty and charm were unparalleled. Family and friends gathered to celebrate their union, completely unaware of the heart-wrenching drama that would unfold. David and Emily met 4 years ago at a charity event in Miami. Emily was volunteering as a coordinator, and David was a guest who had come to donate a substantial amount to the cause. Their eyes met across the room, and David was instantly captivated by her radiant smile and compassionate nature. They struck up a conversation, and from that moment on, they were inseparable. David had proposed to Emily on a serene beach in Key West, under a sky painted with the colors of the setting sun. It was a fairy tale proposal, complete with a diamond ring that sparkled like their future together. Emily had said yes, tears of joy streaming down her face. They spent the next year meticulously planning their dream wedding. Emily wanted a beachside ceremony, and David was happy to oblige. The date was set for June 15th, and everything was falling into place, or so it seemed. The week leading up to the wedding was a whirlwind of activities. The couple's families had flown in from various parts of the country, and the atmosphere was festive and joyous. David's best friend and best man, Mark, had organized a bachelor party that was a night to remember. On the other hand, Emily's maid of honor, Lisa, had thrown a beautiful bridal shower that left everyone in awe. Emily was the epitome of a blushing bride. She was involved in every detail of the wedding preparations, from selecting the flowers to choosing the music playlist. David admired her dedication, and couldn't wait to call her his wife. However, there were subtle signs of tension that David either missed or chose to ignore. Emily had become increasingly secretive about her phone, often stepping out of the room to take calls or reply to messages. When David asked her about it, she brushed it off, attributing it to wedding stress and last-minute arrangements. June 15th arrived, a day that was supposed to be filled with love and joy. The beach was adorned with white and blue decorations, and the sound of waves crashing against the shore added to the romantic ambience. Guests took their seats, eagerly awaiting the moment when David and Emily would exchange their vows. David stood at the altar, looking dashing in his tailored suit. His heart raced with excitement as he imagined Emily walking down the aisle in her wedding dress. The music started, and everyone's attention turned to the entrance. Emily appeared, stunning in her white gown, her face partially veiled. She walked down the aisle, accompanied by her father, who looked equally proud and emotional. David's eyes welled up with tears as he saw his bride approaching. The ceremony began, and the priest led them through their vows. Just as David was about to slip the ring onto Emily's finger, a commotion erupted among the guests. David looked up, bewildered, to see Mark rushing towards him, his face pale and eyes wide with panic. "David, we need to talk," Mark said urgently, pulling him aside. David's heart sank as he saw the expression on his friend's face. Mark was never one to disrupt an occasion unless it was something extremely serious. Mark pulled David aside, away from the prying eyes of the guests. He took a deep breath and spoke in a hushed tone. "David, I didn't want to ruin your day, but you need to see this." Mark handed David his phone, showing him a series of photos and messages that had been sent to Mark anonymously. The images depicted Emily in compromising situations with another man, and the messages were explicit and undeniable. David's world came crashing down around him. He felt a wave of nausea and disbelief wash over him. How could this be happening on what was supposed to be the happiest day of his life? "Are you sure this isn't some kind of sick joke?" David asked, his voice trembling. Mark shook his head, his expression grim. "I'm sorry, David. I thought you needed to know before it was too late." David's mind raced as he tried to process the information. He couldn't believe that Emily, the woman he loved and trusted, had betrayed him in such a devastating way. He looked back at the altar, where Emily stood, seemingly oblivious to the storm that was about to hit. With a heavy heart, David returned to the altar, his face a mask of anguish. Emily sensed that something was wrong and looked at him with concern. "David, what's going on?" she asked, her voice shaky. David took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "Emily, is there something you need to tell me?" Emily's eyes darted around nervously. "What do you mean?" David showed her the photos and messages on Mark's phone. Emily's face turned pale, and she gasped, her hands trembling. "David, I can explain," she stammered. David's anger flared. "Explain. How could you do this to me, to us, on our wedding day?" Tears streamed down Emily's face as she struggled to find the words. "It was a mistake, David. I was stressed and confused. It meant nothing, I swear." David's heart ached as he looked at the woman he had planned to spend the rest of his life with. "How long has this been going on?" Emily sobbed, unable to answer. The guests watched in stunned silence, unsure of what to do. David felt a surge of emotions: betrayal. He turned to the guests. "You were now aware that something was terribly wrong. I can't go through with this," David announced, his voice breaking. "I found out that Emily has been unfaithful." Gasps and murmurs spread through the crowd. Emily's parents looked horrified, while David's mother wept openly. The dream wedding had turned into a nightmare. David took one last look at Emily, his eyes filled with sorrow. "I loved you, Emily. I would have done anything for you. But I can't marry someone who betrayed me." With that, David walked away from the altar, leaving Emily standing there in tears. The guests were left in shock, unsure of how to react. David retreated to his hotel room, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He couldn't believe that his life had taken such a drastic turn in a matter of minutes. The betrayal cut deep, and he doubted if he would ever recover from the pain. Mark knocked on the door and entered, his expression one of sympathy. "David, I'm so sorry. I wish there was something I could do to make this better." David sighed, his shoulders slumping. "Thanks, Mark. I just need some time to process this." Mark nodded and left David alone with his thoughts. David stared at the photos and messages on Mark's phone, trying to make sense of what had happened. The love and trust he had for Emily had been shattered, leaving him feeling empty and lost. In the days that followed, David struggled to come to terms with the betrayal. Emily's attempts to reach out to him were met with silence. He couldn't bear to hear her excuses or explanations. David took some time off work to clear his mind and figure out his next steps. He spent hours walking along the beach, the sound of the waves providing a semblance of comfort. Friends and family reached out to offer their support, but David found it hard to open up about his feelings. During one of his solitary walks, David stumbled upon a small cafe. He decided to go inside and grab a coffee, hoping to distract himself from his thoughts. The cozy atmosphere and the aroma of freshly brewed coffee provided a brief respite from his pain. As he sat by the window, sipping his coffee, David noticed a young woman reading a book at a nearby table. She looked up and caught his eye, offering a warm smile. David managed a weak smile in return, grateful for the small gesture of kindness. Days turned into weeks, and David slowly began to rebuild his life. He focused on work, finding solace in the routine and the sense of accomplishment it brought. He also started attending therapy sessions, which helped him process his emotions and come to terms with the betrayal. One evening, as David walked along the beach, he noticed the same young woman from the cafe sitting on a bench, watching the sunset. He hesitated for a moment before deciding to approach her. "Hi," he said. "Hi." S voice tentative. "We met at the cafe a few weeks ago." "I'm David." The woman looked up and smiled warmly. "I remember. I'm Sarah. It's nice to see you again." They struck up a conversation, finding common ground in their love for the beach and their shared experiences of heartbreak. Sarah had recently gone through a painful breakup, and they found comfort in each other's company. David and Sarah began meeting regularly, their friendship blossoming into something deeper. They spent hours talking, sharing their hopes and dreams, and supporting each other through their healing journeys. Sarah's presence brought a sense of peace and stability to David's life that he hadn't felt in a long time. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, David turned to Sarah and took her hand. "I never thought I would find happiness again after what happened, but you've shown me that there's still hope." Sarah smiled, her eyes filled with warmth. "Life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. I'm glad we found each other." David leaned in and kissed her gently, feeling a sense of contentment he hadn't known in months. In Sarah, he found not only a companion but also a reminder that love and happiness were still possible. Months passed, and David's wounds began to heal. He realized that while Emily's betrayal had shattered his trust, it had also led him to a new beginning with Sarah. He was ready to move forward, leaving the pain of the past behind. David decided it was time to have a final conversation with Emily. He needed closure, not just for himself but also to fully commit to his future with Sarah. He reached out to Emily and arranged to meet her at a cafe. When they met, Emily looked remorseful, her eyes filled with regret. "David, I'm so sorry for everything. I know I hurt you deeply, and I wish I could take it all back." David nodded, his expression calm. "I appreciate your apology, Emily, but I've come to realize that we weren't meant to be. What happened between us was painful, but it also led me to someone who makes me truly happy." Emily's eyes welled up with tears. "I'm glad you've found happiness, David. You deserve it." David smiled softly. "Thank you, Emily. I wish you all the best in the future." With those words, David stood up and walked away, leaving behind the pain and heartbreak that had once consumed him. He was ready to embrace a new chapter in his life, one filled with love, trust, and the promise of a brighter future. Conclusion. David's wedding day had turned into a nightmare, but it ultimately led him to a new beginning. Through the pain and betrayal, he discovered the strength to move forward and find happiness again. With Sarah by his side, David learned that even in the darkest moments, there is always hope for a brighter tomorrow.